Good evening, folks.
Hi, welcome to our premiere live stream of the Bird Whisperer.
First time.
Yep,
We'll see how it goes.
we got one of our birds in to be here with us. This is Gandalf.
Could go well, could go poorly. We'll have to say hello, Candy. How you doing tonight? This is Gandalfus terrificus.
I got him out of bed to come be on the show with us.
He is a hybrid macaw. He is called a Maui Sunrise. His parentage is kind of mixed. I could go into all the details, but suffice to say that he's quite rare as a hybrid. And he is Kate's bird. Absolutely. We have our first visitor.
Here we go.
Hi, folks. How you doing?
Gilbert, hello. Good to see you.
Thanks for coming, Gilbert. Very nice of you. Aha. Got more too.
Irene, did you have the list?
I don't have it right in front of me.
Okay.
Where it's over there somewhere. Since
you talk to the folks, I'll see if I can find
Since you
the list.
reworked it, I haven't redone it yet. So I got the old ones in there somewhere. But I haven't redone it today. Well, thank you, Gilbert. I'm not sure awesome would be the word I would describe for myself today. It's been kind of a strange couple of days. As some of you may know, I have COPD. And suddenly yesterday, it decided to just kick my butt. And yesterday evening, I was having a pretty rough go. And today is not a lot better. I've been pretty much idle. As you can see, I'm using my little oxygen concentrator.
Which is what's humming in the background.
Yeah, if it's humming in the background, I'm sorry. And but right now, I'm seem to be doing better right now than I was earlier today. But it's a wake-up call. Get your attention, that's for sure. But for the first time last night, I actually had to wheel my concentrator into the bedroom and keep the hoses on all night.
Thank you, Gilbert.
Please, thanks. Grateful for that, Gilbert. Thank you.
Please remember, thumbs up, guys.
Yeah, we're going to need all we can get. Well, we've got 4 people here, so there must be just a couple lurking. I kind of think my son Josh might be lurking. He sent me a message right before this went live, but seemed to indicate that he might watch it later.
If you can't hear the machine, can you at least hear us?
Yeah, are we?
There's Josh.
There's Josh. So can you hear us all right? Because we've got our microphone about 3 feet away. So if the sound's bad, let us know. Josh, thanks for coming by, son. I'm glad you did.
Thank you, Gilbert.
So anyway, as far as the goal of the bird listener, I've got about probably a good 30 years of bird ownership and a whole lifetime of loving birds. But over the years, I've written a lot of stuff, learned a lot of stuff. Was with a bird club over in Tallahassee, Florida, where I learned a great deal. There was some really fine people in that club that taught me a lot. And that's where I got my first big bird, which was Carib. I got him around 2001. And I've had him ever since. He was about 6 or 7 years old when I got him. So he's going on 26, 27 years old around there. And then we've got Bravo, who was also a rescue. And that's an interesting story. He's about, maybe 15 or so. And then this guy up here is also a rescue. And Gandy came to us in 2012 as about a 2 or a 3-year-old. So he's the youngest that we've got. Was very poorly cared for. He'll never fly. His wings are stunted, and he was never fledged.
Cannot open.
So he can't open his wings fully. So he'll never know what it's like to fly like a bird, which is really tragic in a lot of ways.
Like a lot of us.
And so anyway, the goal here is to talk about birds. What I've found over the years is that birds are a lot smarter than most people give them credit for. They're a lot more resilient than most people believe. For all their frailties, they're pretty tough little critters. I mean, they've survived a long time. I believe, as do many, that birds are essentially the descendants of dinosaurs. And this is borne out by one particular bird I'll talk about just real briefly, called an Archaeopteryx. And the Archaeopteryx, the fossils were found over in China, in a very, very remote area of China. And they were found by a young Chinese researcher. What was odd about them was that you would call them a microraptor. They weren't very big. They were maybe 3-4 feet long from nose to tail. But even in the fossils, they found feather-like structures on what we would call the front legs and the back. And then they found back legs, which also had feathers on them. So this didn't fit with the normal dinosaur taxonomy. So they did a little research on it. And they actually built models. It's hard to do from a two-dimensional squashed relic to make a three-dimensional model, but they tried to do that. So what they did was they tried a couple of different variations on how they would position these legs/wings to see whether or not this Archaeopteryx could really fly. And as it turned out, in one configuration, if they left the rear legs kind of splayed out to the side, it sort of worked, but it didn't really give much lift. So now bear in mind, these Archaeopteryx were climbing what they figure were 300-foot trees and then jumping off. So it's not like they took off from the ground and then they would climb back up again. So
more likely they were gliding.
Yeah, exactly. But whenever they tucked those rear legs under what the tail, or where the tail was, but then fanned the feathers out, so to speak, they found that it could actually, in a bit of a breeze, would generate lift. So it could literally fly. So that's the /proof positive that this Archaeopteryx really was a flying dinosaur, which obviously died out, which is not surprising. Fully 90% of the animals that lived from back in that time have died, and a lot of them went out via what they call terminal buds in the tree of evolution.
Terminal buds?
Terminal buds, BUDS.
Okay, like a flower.
Where something goes off and develops, but it's not quite fine-tuned enough
Hi, Leanna.
to where it really works, and ultimately it just dies out. And that's what they figure happened to this Archaeopteryx. There's only been 7 of them found, all in China, and a lot of the work is considered speculative, but I think it holds value because it really does kind of demonstrate to me that even back then, now this predates a lot of dinosaurs. This was 150 million years ago when this Archaeopteryx lived. So he wasn't a big guy, but he was well adapted for his time. And, who knows what wiped him out. I mean, there were worldwide calamities every other week back then. It could have been anything.
Irene says she's amazed that birds can live through bad winter weather.
Yeah, that's true too.
They did not like they have fur coats they can put on.
That's true. But you know what? They do have the ability they have to fluff their feathers up, believe it or not, really does give them a pretty good insulation. And actually, most birds, not all, but some birds can actually raise their body temperature. So whenever they do get cold and they fluff their wings up,
Okay.
and they generate a little bit of warmth, and they can get through it that way. So anyway, that's a little sideline I didn't really intend to get off onto, but what the heck. So, history of Kate and I with birds.
Julie's here. Hi, Julie.
Hi, Julie. Kate and I had birds when we first met up in Omaha. And we had little cockatiels. She had one, I had one. And then after that, when we parted company for, 15 years? When we parted company, I went down to Florida. And it was a while after I got to Florida before I got back into birds, maybe a year or so. And I found this little bird club called Tri-State Avian Society. Joined it. Had a little green cheek conure was the bird that I had at that point. And not too long after I got with that club, a lady who had a gorgeous blue and gold macaw that actually belonged to her
Yes,
husband.
Julie. That's Dandy.
Had passed away. And she asked me to bird sit for Carib while she went out to Arizona to visit family. Well, she ended up bringing the cage over and the bird. And it was going to be for about 2-3 weeks. By about second week, I knew that I was going to have a very, very hard time giving Carib up. She was giving him good care. I'm not going to fault that at all. She was trying, but his claws had not been trimmed in so long that they were like the tips of needles. And I had to wear a sleeve off a sweatshirt to even handle him, where every nail would puncture me.
Did you see what Irene said?
No, what?
She saw swans that were encased in ice, and she thought they were dead, but when she went over to them, they broke the ice and came alive.
Yeah,
I've never heard of that. I
They're-
guess that
they're,
would stop the wind, though.
they're incredible creatures. They're very tough. This is Gandhi up here. Yes, that's right. So anyway, after the first week, I got him to the vet, got his nails trimmed. And by the time she got back, I pretty much knew that I was going to do the best I could to hang on to him. So we reached an agreement. Basically, she almost gave him to him. Charged me next to nothing for him. And he's been with me ever since. He's ornery as hell. He's he's my old curmudgeon. He's always been cranky. He's always been very willful. These guys have personalities all their own that you just wouldn't believe. The 3 birds that we have 3 distinct personalities.
And different personalities for different people.
Yeah, most definitely. Gandhi and I, we don't really get along. We don't interact very much.
Carib is the 27-year-old. Yes.
But if I have to, I can handle him. But I usually bleed. Where Kate has become really her or his, what you would call bonded mate. And he is extremely gentle with her and literally never hurts her unless it's an accident.
And what you saw a minute ago, he wasn't really trying to bite me. He was going to bumped me with his beak to let me know he didn't want me to mess with him right then.
Yeah, it is a good thing Gandy ended up with Kate because he was kept in a very small cage by an idiot who didn't know anything about big birds.
Not at all.
He was poorly fed, so his nutrition sucked when we got him. His health was pretty bad. Like I said, he'll never fly. He was never allowed to pledge to stretch his wings out, so the muscles and tendons and ligaments in his wings are all stunted and will never open up sufficiently for him to fly. Yes, Karib is the 27-year-old. That's right. And he has a temper, holds a grudge. He will nail you if you are not looking. If I look away for just an instant and I'm not paying close attention to him, he will try to bite me.
Yeah, he treats me just as gently as you can. I can't believe it.
But at the same time,
he lets me rub on his chest and tummy. He lets me rub his head. He doesn't try it.
Well, he'll do that with me too, but if I look away for a second, then he'll come back and nail the heck out of me. So, Josh, which one scares you? Karib? Scares me too, son. No, he's a toughie. Now, Bravo, on the other hand, is a big old baby. He's a real sweetheart. He doesn't seem to have a mean bone in his body. But
unless I'm in the room.
He has a little bit of a different relationship with Kate than he does with me. But he's a very gentle giant, very laid back. Other than his screaming, he doesn't get excited about much. He's a pretty calm bird, but he does like to scream a lot.
Yes.
And whenever they do get to screaming, it's loud. It's loud.
Go lay down. Go on.
When I used to, back in Tallahassee, I would do outreach, and I would take both Karib and Bravo, and I'd have one of them on each shoulder. Well, as during the course of the day, not often, but sometimes they would come out with these real big screams. Well, when they did that, my ears would ring for about an hour afterwards, literally would ring, because they are just, one on each shoulder, and they just, when they let go, that scream can be heard through the jungle for about 5 miles. So you can imagine how loud it is. And I know we'd be standing in a park here in Tallahassee, and one of them would let go, and people a block away would come looking to see what it was, because it's pretty unusual and pretty unique. Okay, let me catch up here on what people are saying. Patience and expertise and expertise, yeah. Takes a while to get it, but that's the only way you can go at them. You cannot rush a bird. That's the
You have to let
the
them
long and
do
short
it
of
at
it.
their speed.
You really cannot. You can try to accelerate training or behavior modifications, but generally they go at their own pace. So you have to just kind of go along with that. Yeah, you're right. Rescue animals are allowed to be curmudgeons, and he is definitely a curmudgeon.
Except around me. It just doesn't seem to be all that
I have a
curmudgeon.
feral cat that still gets me all the time, especially when it's too cold for him to go out. Well, cats always know who's in charge.
However, she hangs out at the old folks' home near them and is very gentle with them.
Huh.
You suppose it's because they move more slowly?
Huh.
What's cool, Josh?
And he's gentle with them, huh? He's gentle with the folks at that facility. That's interesting. Yeah, whenever you hear exotic birds at the zoo, that's pretty much the same thing I got going here. But I'll tell you what, Now, in the morning and in the evening, there's a period of time there where you can almost expect them to scream, and that's their
4:45 p.m.
that's their okay, let's go down to the clay lick and start getting ready for bed. And they want to tell everybody else in the flock, because in the wild, these guys live in flocks up to, at least blue and gulls, 30 to 40 birds. Now, they'll be bonded with one bird, and they typically do bond for life, male and female. And they will talk back and forth. And then, sometime in the afternoon, they'll all start screaming to let all the neighbors know it's time to go feed, time to go down to the bank of the river and get some clay. So that's kind of when they do it at their worst. Now, in the morning here, they stay covered until a little bit later in the morning. Used to, way back when I was in the working world, when I'd have to uncover them in the morning, yeah, they would then go through a morning scream too. So what do I call their calls? Just hollering at me. Okay, let's see.
Irene, we've had the birds and we've had cats. We've had multiple cats and we've had a single cat. So
Yep.
the birds and the cats kind of work out a deal. They're all part of the same family, and so they don't try and get each other usually.
The cats learn.
Mm-hmm. And I'll tell you what, this one chases not only the cat, but the dog. He'll be down on the floor. We have a large wardrobe. He gets under the wardrobe. That's his hideout. And the dog or the cat will come over and he'll chase it. He even chases the vacuum when I'm vacuuming in there. He doesn't want anything near his hideout.
Irene, Blue, our cat, rides on my walker too.
And,
He loves to go through the house.
and his name is Bleux, Blue.
Gilbert, yeah, it is. They're highly intelligent. These guys roughly have the intelligence level of about a 3-year-old. Now, that's not across the board, but as far as their ability to perceive the world around them and act on those feelings, they're about 3 years old. So if you think about a 3-year-old that throws a temper tantrum or holds a grudge or just gets mad, that's a pretty good indicator of where a blue and gold macaw is. And but each one of them definitely has their own personality and their own way of doing business.
What's
Okay.
really funny is they like routine. And you get into a routine with them. And if you step out of that routine for some reason, it really upsets them. It messes with their world. And these guys, all 3 of ours, have the routine. When it's time to go to bed, they start letting me know. Gandhi says night-night. Karib and Bravo just scream. But when I go and put them in to their beds, Bravo goes in first in his cage. And he hangs on the front of the cage like this. And I reach the cage and I stroke his chest right there. Not going to stroke his. He's not all that thrilled with that idea. But Bravo likes it. That's the only time I can touch him that he doesn't try and get me. So I do that. I cover him up. Then I put Karib in. And now Karib has a huge tall cage. You have to climb a ladder to get the cover on the thing. It's so big. But Karib has decided that he likes having his tummy rubbed too. So I'll do that, put him to bed. And then I come over and put Gandhi to bed. Now, if I get them out of order, if I put Gandhi to bed first, or if one of them is screaming more and I can't stand it and I cover them up, they get unhappy. And for several days afterward, they let me know that I did it wrong. So, and getting up is the same way. I open the blinds in their rooms one at a time and I say, "Good morning, Mr. Sunshine," each time I open a blind. And when I uncover their cages, it's "Good morning, Mr. Gandhi," or Mr. Bravo, or whatever. If I don't do it in the right order, and if I don't do it the right voice tones and everything else, they'll scream. They'll just scream and scream.
Yeah, they do like their routines. They like I mess with them. Not so much anymore, but I used to mess with them back in Tallahassee. I'd change their cages around and move them, things of that sort, just to kind of give them a little bit of a shake-up, because that routine thing can really get entrenched. And if you don't change things around now and then, you end up getting a bird that's really in a rut, and they get bored very easily. So I would mess with their arrangement of toys in their cage.
Kind of like a homemaker that moves all the furniture on you.
Move bowls around, change positions on some of the perches that I could attach to the inside of the cage.
Hi, Susanna. Good to see you.
Things of that sort. And it's important to do that because, if you think about it, if you never change your environment, and your environment is small, you get pretty bored with it after a while, don't you? You got to at least move a chair from one wall to the other, do something. And so I do the same thing for the birds. What I used to do is I'd just take a chair, I'd go in there and sit in the bird room and just watch how they moved around in their cages. Could they go from level to level? Was there any place that was giving them trouble? Did they have room to stretch their wings out?
Wing shui instead of feng shui.
Well, actually, I wrote an article about feng shui for birds. That this notebook here is just a few of the writings that I've done on birds. Just a few. And in some way, shape, or form, I hope to share most of these with people that are coming here. But I've got a lot of material. And I've also, one of my best resources used to be a website called Birds and Ways. Hundreds and hundreds of pages of wonderful bird material. And I guess they've pulled it down because it's gone now. But it was a fantastic resource. So I'm looking for more. I have one right now that I have sent a message to the owner of called Avian Web to see if he will allow me to drop links to his site. I guess I can do it without asking, but I feel like I ought to. Just if nothing else, if he gets a big increase in traffic, he'll understand why.
Which makes me wonder and want to ask you guys, if we had links to pictures and good resource sites and things like that, would you like us to drop them in and give you something you can check, go watch after this live stream? Because we're planning on doing this on a regular basis.
To answer your question, Gilbert, Birds and Ways used to be a magazine. It was a print magazine. And then when those kind of went by the wayside, they became an online magazine. And I have a feeling I used to go there 15 years ago. It was one of the best websites in the country. And I don't know, did they get tired of running it? Did they get tired of trying to update it and keep it all current?
Or did they just?
Because there were, they had
not enough people.
They had thousands of links there, so they'd have to keep those links updated. It probably just got to be too much work. So, but the stuff they had on the various breeds, I'm talking about all birds, not just big ones, but they had everything. And their stuff on nutrition and feeding and health and wellness was amazing. I wish I'd known they were going away, because I would have gone in there and grabbed a bunch of stuff. I would have copied a bunch of it.
Well, the reason I was asking about the link is one of the things that David's been thinking about doing on these live streams is giving you information about specific birds, like a conure or something of that nature. And I was thinking, if he's going to talk about a specific bird, maybe we should have some links to things about conures, because in an hour, you can't possibly share everything that you know about one bird. So that's why I was asking, because if he's going to talk about one or two different birds, maybe we'd go, if nothing else, we could find places where we could show you links for pictures, what they look like.
Yeah, there's a lot of, I've got quite a few of those that I could probably dig up, where I've got especially a lot of pictures of the hybrid macaws. And for example, there's probably, maybe 40 different varieties of conures that all have different markings, they're different sizes. And I can hopefully generate links to all of those, so that if you have a question about, say, for example, the most gorgeous one is the sun conure.
I'd have some good pictures. Conure that has the same colors that Gandy does.
But
for a while, we had one of each.
There are all kinds of conures, and they are beautiful little birds. They're easy keepers. They're very playful. They can speak a little bit. They will talk some. But they're a good apartment bird, because they do, well, conures can scream. I'm not going to lie to you. But it's not as bad as some others. But there are birds that are good for apartment living. There are also birds that I will tell you I will discourage you from having if you live close by to other people, because you'll get complaints.
Are our birds in the same family as the scarlet macaw?
Yeah.
Gilbert asked.
Yes, they are.
Gilbert asked.
Yep. There's the hyacinth macaw, which is the largest. That's
Big,
the one that's
beautiful
cobalt blue with the yellow around his eyes. The biggest and strongest of the macaws. Then you have the scarlet macaw, and then there's a green wing macaw, and then the blue and gold macaw. Those are the four big ones.
And the green wing is red with green on its wing.
Yeah, it's very weird. But those four are the largest of the macaw species. Now, there's others that have gone extinct or are found only in zoos, such as the Spix macaw. That one, there are a few surviving examples of that, but they've been pretty well wiped out in the wild. So it's, again, it's pretty tragic. A lot of the birds that, see, these guys are what they call hole nesters. So all the big macaws nest basically in the holes in trees. Well, if you're going in and wiping out forests, and these guys live in South and Central and South America, where they're ripping down rainforest left and right. These guys are losing habitat every day. Now, right now, the blue and gold is not considered an endangered species, but they are declared to be under threat. There's a difference, big difference. But most of the other ones are the same boat. And then there's also those that get captured for the wild bird trade, which if I ever ran into anybody running that kind of an operation, I'd be hard pressed not to beat the living crap out of them in some way, shape, or form. If they ever traded in wild birds, I'd find some way to let them all go. Knowing they'd probably be killed in the wild, but I don't care. It's the most disgusting way I can think of to make a living, other than child trafficking. Okay, that's worse. But, okay, what else? Wow, it's pretty cold in some places. -2.
They're both in Canada.
Yeah, that's not too bad, but it's pretty chilly. When you get down to about 0 degrees centigrade, that's 32 degrees Fahrenheit. And when you go below 0 centigrade, it kind of somehow evens out with Fahrenheit. Going up there's a formula, but I don't remember what it is. Well, Josh, they're not technically they're not threatened, they're under threat. That's a different category. If you say a breed is threatened, that has a certain ecological meaning. Where if they say that they're under threat, that's a different meaning. So there are plenty of them out there, but if we're not careful, they will become threatened as well. So
The dog you were told to go lie
oh
down.
boy.
Go on. Go on.
So topics for the future. What would you like to hear? What would you like to talk about? Anybody got any ideas? Because I can make some notes here and do a little research. If there are
Specific
certain
bird you're interested in.
if there's certain breeds of birds that you're curious about, I can look up information on that one. Say it's let's say you're interested in
Penguin.
Royal Quakers. Yeah, penguins. Okay.
Not too many
Or,
people have penguins for pets.
Well, there's a lot of birds. Maybe you're
Male
interested.
and wing trimming. That's a good one.
Okay. Maybe you're interested in African greys or ringneck parakeets or Pionus, Poicephalus. That's another one. Some of these you may not have heard of because it's kind of old timers. We know our birds a little better than some do. But native grouse. Oh, I have no idea. That's a wild bird. That's a native bird. I don't even know they have any grouse around here. Most of the grouse I've heard of are in the Midwest. In Iowa, Nebraska, all through there. And but I don't know that they have any grouse down here. If they do, they've probably all been shot.
I know we don't have a grouse season for the hunters.
Hummingbirds. Okay. Well, oddly enough, I do know a bit about hummingbirds. So I can do that. I'll post my interview with a hummingbird, which I did some time ago. Well, the common ones that are kept in a lot of households. And I'm not talking about what they call caged birds. That's different. Like finches and canaries. They generally are just kept in a cage. They're not necessarily let out. They don't sit on your shoulder and walk around the house with you. They're just usually songbirds that sit in a cage, and that's pretty much it. But the ones that will be avian companions for you include things like the cockatiel. And there's so many different varieties of cockatiels that it's almost impossible to figure out anymore because they keep coming up with new variations all the time. So they've got all these various, what they call pied, different types of pied cockatiels that have all kinds of different colors. Well, falcons and falconry, I know some about, but there again, those are wild birds. I am more into the exotic birds that are commonly kept as avian companions.
But you can do some
But I
research.
do know some. I've always been fascinated by falcons, and I do know quite a bit about them. So, yeah, I can brush up on that.
I got it on the list.
I wrote an article on. There were 2 falcons that came here to San Antonio, and they camped out on one of the buildings downtown. And they made a big deal out of it, of course, which was cool. And then the next year, one of them came back. So I wrote up an article about the one that came back because they do return to their nest sites. And a couple weeks later, the other one showed up. So then they had another clutch of eggs, and I think they had 2 that time. And I tried to follow them in the newspaper, until they fledged them.
I mean,
And there
what,
was
do you,
some people taking pictures.
what do you mean you didn't know they stayed with their trainers? I mean, if the falconer let the bird go, would they not come back? Is that what you're getting at?
You're talking about the falcon, the person that flies falcons?
Hello, Shelley. Glad to meet you. I'm glad you dropped in.
Hi, Shelley.
Where are you from?
Apparently here. She's over by 1604. Over by Randolph. Yep. A trained falcon will stay with a person. They are trained from a very early age to come back to that person, and then of course they sort of bond with them, and they're only turned loose to hunt, then they come back. But a wild falcon that's just out there all the time, that's a whole different story. Whole different story. Well, Josh, they just sort of did that here in San Antonio. It made front page whenever they got them, when they got here, which I thought was cool. And then there were some individuals that kept following them while they were here and posting pictures because it was in an office building. So the people that were in that building obviously were interested in how it was going. So they put pictures up on their Facebook pages, and I'd go check them out. So I was able to kind of keep my eye on them.
One kind of bird that we know a lot about because they come to our house every year is barn swallows.
Oh, yeah.
We've had several families of barn swallows build nests on our front porch and come back year after year after year. Matter of fact, David, the first couple of times that we had them come in, he'd climb up on the ladder and take pictures when the eggs were laid and then as they grew. So we know a little bit about swallows.
I took pictures of them every day
Mm-hmm.
of the eggs, and then as they hatched every day that they grew after that.
No, Gilbert, she's talking about Randolph Air Force Base in San Antonio.
Yep. Yes, swallows are cool. They're
Very good.
rather
parents.
incredible birds. They're wonderful parents. Wonderful parents. We have one nest outside that has been used for about 6 generations of swallows now. It's all stacked up. You can see each level because they build on top of it. And each time that nest has been used, the clutch has been about 5 eggs, and they would all hatch. So we've probably put 30, 35 birds through that
At least.
one nest. So it's kind of interesting.
And yes, Joshua,
Yeah, it is against the law.
against the law.
Once they set up their nest and they've chosen their nesting site, at least here in Texas, it is illegal to mess with them. A lot of people do, but it is illegal to mess with them.
And you would be amazed at what people do to try and keep the birds from setting up nests on their property. Too.
Yeah, they do. They do a lot of. Well, okay, they do make a mess. Yeah,
They are messy.
they
All birds are messy.
they
critters.
they poop a lot around the edge of their nests and things of that sort, and they're
Hard to potty
throwing
train
stuff
birds.
out but they're fascinating little critters. So I'm perfectly content to clean up after them when they're done. Oh boy. Okay. I put together a long series of. Where did I put that? I had pictures, didn't I? Where was I putting those?
What?
The barn swallows.
You hold a story and pictures and everything.
I didn't
don't
I
know where
do
you
that on
did.
Steam It?
Probably.
I may have done that on Steam It. I'll have to go look for it. I've got a long series, a series that I did 1 year on our barn swallows from end to end, from their showing up until they're fledging.
Shelley wants to know if barn swallows are endangered.
No, they're not. No. In fact, they're one of the most common birds in the world. And they also are one of the ones that migrate the furthest. For example, there are barn swallows that migrate from Africa up into the United Kingdom, up to England every year, and then turn around and go back. The ones that we get here typically go down to Mexico and then come back. So,
Butterfly.
like butterflies and hummingbirds too.
Mm-hmm.
So they are long distance flyers, and they are migratory, and they're pretty tough. And they catch their food on the wing, and they're eating insects. So thousands and thousands of mosquitoes. So they're a good one to have around. And my sister's neighbor inherited them. They pooped all over her house, so she moved, huh? Well, that's interesting. Well, yeah, they definitely make a mess. But
I
I'm a
wouldn't get along
softie.
with her either, Irene.
I'm a softie.
We have a issue here where we live. The 1st of September and for the whole month of September, the hunters in the area are allowed to indiscriminately shoot all of the doves. And these little doves, the rest of the year, they're sweet, they're precious, they come in, they coo, they clean and peck the seeds and stuff in the grass. But during the month of September, these little birds are so frightened. Get them, they come in and land on in our yard, and their eyes look 3 times the normal size. They're very shaky, they're very freaked out by any noise that comes around. I absolutely hate the fact that people can just go out there with whatever they want, shoot them, let them fall to the ground, and they don't do anything about it.
Well, Kate's birthday is the 31st of August. And I always tell her the next morning we will wake up to the sound of shotguns starting about dawn. And that's true every year because there's a lot of open space around here. So they're out here hunting. We try to put out extra food for the doves so that if they do make it this far, at least they know here they can get food and water without getting shot at. They're pretty hinky for the whole month, obviously. So
Gilbert,
I can't say that I don't like it, but most of the people that hunt doves do dress them out and do serve them up. They're the way I figure it, they're going out there with their $2,000 shotguns and their 50 cents a shot shotgun shells, and they're shooting down a little bitty bird that's got maybe 2 bites of meat on the breast. So they're paying, $50, $60, $70 a pound for this dove meat. Who am I to tell them no? They're supporting a whole segment of the economy, gun makers and sellers and all that stuff.
yes,
So
they do make for life.
and so I leave them be. But I'll never do it. I would never hunt a bird, no matter what. Okay, where are we? Nope, I wouldn't hunt doves for love nor money. I haven't been able to, that nest that I told you about that's 6 layers tall, whenever the birds leave every year, I keep saying, I need to take that nest down. Let them start over again. I can't do it. I can't knock it down.
Problem is we're going to have to next year
Yeah.
because it's gotten so tall they can barely squeeze in to feed the babies.
It started out on the top of one of our porch lights, which I unscrewed the bulb so that wouldn't hurt them, and then it just kind of kept going. And now it's up, just yay far from the roof. So I am going to have to knock it down, but I really hate to because it's a gorgeous construction. We call it the Waldorf. It's a masterpiece. What are you doing over there? Huh? What are you doing
Tasting your chair.
What are you doing? You're a big fella.
He's being grumpy, so be careful.
You've been a good boy. You've been so quiet. Yes, you have. Yeah, he's trying to figure out, why am I not in bed?
Yeah. He
Why
kind
am
of
I
looked
not
at me like I
sleeping?
was crazy when I got him up to bring him in tonight.
Yeah, why am I not in bed?
Do you want to go night night? Do you want to go night night?
Well, if I was lost in the woods, I don't know. I'd rather go for a squirrel or something like that before I'd go after birds. Yeah, I guess it would depend on what weapons I had, you know. If I had a shotgun, I could kind of take my choice. If I had a 22 or something like that, I'd probably go for squirrels or rabbits, things of that sort. But anyway. Okay, my granddaughter has a parakeet. She wants to know if your macaw ever tries to fly away. This one, no, because he can't fly. Now, Carib and Bravo, they've not been outside in a long, long time.
No, I take him out once.
Well, yeah,
But not just.
not to where they would actually get the idea they wanted to fly.
No.
Some people train their macaws to fly free and come back to them. Some people trim their wings. When I was doing outreach with my birds, I trimmed their wings. Now, this was only the primary flight feathers, and I only trimmed them enough so that if they were to take off, they could fly level for a while, but they wouldn't really be able to gain altitude, and pretty soon they would kind of have to come in for a landing. Now, the other thing is they're not used to flying, so they would get fatigued very quickly. And even if they were fully flighted, which they are now, and if they took off, they probably wouldn't go far. Now, as for your parakeet, that's a whole different story. Parakeets, being small, can get scared very easily. And if the wings are not trimmed, they can take off in a heartbeat. You know, they can take off through an open door. They can take off your hand.
Here.
What?
Kinder's here.
Kinder's here?
Ivory Ebony.
Kinder. Where?
Right there.
Oh, I see her. Yeah, Ivory Ebony there. That's my daughter.
Yeah.
Hi, Kinder. Thanks for coming by. So anyway, parakeets, they can get away real easy. Now, they're real easy to trim the flight feathers on because they are so small. You just kind of hold the wing out and very carefully just snip off the ends of only the primary flight feathers. And that keeps them from being able to get away very easily. With these guys, a little bigger job, but it's often a good idea to have help even with a parakeet. So it's kind of a two-person job, just to be careful.
When I was a kid, my early to middle teens, I raised parakeets. And the main reason I could think of to trim their wings is because when you clean a parakeet's cage, your cages first are very small. And you take it outside and the seed holes and things can blow away. It's much easier to clean that way. But if you take the bottom out for that to happen and the bird does not have wings clipped, it can drop out and fly away. That's how I lost my very first bird. I had her from the time I was 7 until I was the time before. Took the bottom out and she got startled and she fell and she was very confused because of that and she fell off into the trees and she never could come back. I could see her, I could talk to her, but for some reason she was afraid to fly back and I lost her.
There are some techniques that you can use if your bird does fly away, but most of them require quite a bit of planning in advance. For example, recording your bird's voice. And then if they take off, you play that recording, they recognize their own voice and then come back to it. So, and there's others, but that's the main one right there. So, yeah, just about everybody who's had birds at one time or another has had one fly away.
I was heartbroken because she was my first bird and the one that I had the longest. So when she left, it made me very sad.
Well, Kinder can relate to this one. We were living out east of Tallahassee in the woods. I mean, in the primordial forest of Florida. And our African gray Augustus got out through an open sliding door. Just boom, he was gone. And so the three of us, Kinder's mother, myself, and Kinder, we go out and start trying to find Augustus. After what, maybe 45 minutes or so, we find him sitting in a loblolly pine tree, just on a low branch, just hanging out. He's not making any noise. He was maybe 30 feet from the house into the woods. He was just sitting there, hanging out, having a good time. Wasn't making any noise. So scared the crap out of all of us, but we got him back. Yep.
5 minutes left.
5 minutes. Wow.
The hour went quickly.
Yeah, it did. Well, I can shoot my mouth off for an hour anytime. Okay, so did we get some topics for next time?
Yes, we did.
Good, good. What do we got here? Nails and wing trimming. Boy, can I talk about that. That native grouse, I'm not sure. The hummingbirds, I can talk about a little bit. Now, the common birds, common companion birds, yeah. And the falcons and falconry, that's an area that I'm not real familiar with.
But you can do some
But I can do some research on it. We'll see what you want to do.
Can you have your
You know.
macaw say something to him?
Not
Shelley,
right. He's not going to talk tonight.
They don't talk on command. It's just when he feels like it. Often he'll look at me and say peekaboo. If your granddaughter wants to see it, we have a live stream on Saturday morning called Inside Kate's Kitchen. Sunday mornings from 1 to 3 p.m. Sunday afternoon. And the birds talk a lot on that. They're usually at least one of them.
Yeah, this late at night, they're not going to be very vocal.
He's been asleep. I woke him up to bring him in for the show, so he probably wouldn't say anything. It's like when you wake a little kid up to take them somewhere. They usually kind of are goofy until they get to go back to sleep.
I wish we could get him to, speak on command. That'd be really nice, because that's one of the things that people often expect of a bird. Oh, can you make him talk? No, I can't make him talk any more than I can make you talk.
I don't know if you can tell, but he's standing on one foot. His other foot is pulled up underneath. He's ready to be asleep.
Yeah, he's wondering why he's out here. Right
Josh,
now.
thank you for coming by.
Thank you, Josh. I'm glad you made it. And Kinder, you too. I'm real glad you came by. So
We're glad everybody came. Thank you for joining us on
thank
our
you very
first live stream.
I think we'll probably go ahead and get ready to shut this thing down. But please come back next week. In the meantime, I'll be doing some work on the questions that have been raised. And we will see you next week.
Bye.
Good night. God bless.
Take care.
Bye-bye.